Good afternoon. Thanks for joining the Wellness Lab podcast, where we're sharing valuable information with anyone in the community to support their overall health and wellness. Today, we have Nishani with us that will be helping us and guiding us on how to achieve overall wellness through your counseling, your therapy. So happy to have you today, Nishani. Please feel free to provide us your background and any major highlights, and then we'll go into the specific portion of your services. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lilia. I always appreciated been introduced to you through LinkedIn, and I've been looking into your podcast and listening to the Wellness Lab. And there's so many really good episodes that I've tuned into that I've been like, ooh, I got to think about it that way and reframe the way that I perceive health and wellness too. Hi, my name is Nishani Jayawardena. I am the founder of Attunigrate. I founded Attunigrate early this year. It's a new word, a word coined by me that combines attunement and integration, which I believe leads to our overall elevation in life. And I believe that every single person has resources built in already available to us. We have this inner wisdom, and my purpose in life is to help others activate that. And I think I started doing it for myself first. And just like anything else, I think you have to walk the walk before you can talk the talk and tell everybody else about how to. So I've been in business, an entrepreneur for over 3 years now. I first started off as Navatherapy, and I became a therapist primarily because that just came naturally to me. I'm a licensed counselor in Michigan and a national certified counselor, and being a listener was already something I was tuned into, but I was always fascinated by the brain and the power of the mind. And yes, there's a psychology piece, but I've also, in my practice, have learned about the spiritual elements and the intuitive parts where science meets the woo-woo. And I've tried to combine those things together and bring a new perspective, because I know I'm not the only person who's doing this. I know we have all of us, we have our own methods of presenting what path we've taken and how it's led to our elevation. So yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I think you've had some incredible guests, and I'm humbled to be invited to the room and to really get into this. So I'm excited.
Thanks, Nishani. Thank you for being a valued listener within the podcast, and obviously for contributing. It's great to know you've been listening. You know the format, and also to have you here because, as you mentioned, through LinkedIn we connected, and
Yeah.
I learned so much about what you do and how you support others. I really like the way you're positioning on how you can support others. Right, like it's how to get others home themselves. So
Yeah.
attune, integrate, elevate, which is
Yes.
good to know what's your approach, because as you mentioned, there may be other therapies out there that are supporting others, and it's great to know. But obviously this the way that the framework you use and the
Mhm.
approach you take, it can also make a difference for anyone listening to us. And the good thing, or something that is really valuable to highlight, is that you offer this virtual counseling. In the world we're right now living, there's lots of benefit from
Yeah.
it. Sometimes I know there's the opportunity, if you have it, if you're around like that location, great. Meet and greet
Yes.
is always welcome and nice, but also sometimes we're quite busy, and making time to commute, to do things, and find the time to take something for ourselves to improve our own well-being might be tricky. So it's great you offer the virtual services, or also for someone like me that we're not as close. I
Yeah.
know that's the option as well. So
Yeah.
kudos to you to offer this venue.
Yeah.
It's really good, and I know you have like a HIPAA, secure telehealth
Exactly.
component to it, which is also great to share with the audience.
Yeah, there was so many things when I first started. I was so against telehealth therapy because I loved the in-person connection. And I will still advocate for in-person because there are just some things that we expose, especially like body language, that as a therapist I am paying attention to. And my goal overall, especially in the therapy room, is to help my clients become more aware of what they're talking about and how what they're saying affects their body, because we have a lot of telltale signs in our body that's screaming for help, even though we may not be noticing that. So in a virtual space, right, even now as we're recording, you get to see like a smaller frame of who I am. You're not really seeing what's happening underneath the chair and underneath the table and how my legs are positioned. And I often will make the joke with my clients, because I'll be like, so what's going on under the table? Like, I'm like, are you clenching your hands? Are you picking at your nails because I can't see your hands? Or are you fidgeting with a pen? And this is how I bring awareness. But if they were in front of me, it would be a lot better. So yes, virtual has saved my life since COVID. It's become so much more easier for people to adapt the virtual space. And Michigan is a big state. So I work with a team of about 6 therapists total. And so all of us live in different places in Michigan. And we're also able to work with clients from all over Michigan, including the UP, which makes it a lot more accessible. As you said, it makes it a lot more convenient, because I have college students at MSU and U of M, and they just roll out of bed and they're starting their call while they're laying in bed with me, because they feel comfortable enough to do that. And I think if I were to ask them to come and see me in person, they're probably going to be 15, 30 minutes late, if they even show up, because they're sleeping in and their schedules are so different. You know, every client has their own life experiences that I am also learning to adjust to. And I get to dive into their personal lives a little bit easily in telehealth, you know, because sometimes I'm in somebody's house, right? They're telling me about something and they're like, oh yeah, this is the artwork that I did the other day. I want to show it to you. If we met in person, I wouldn't have that opportunity. So I've learned to love telehealth, even though if you talked to me a couple of years ago, I would be like, no, therapy is not meant to be virtual. I've adjusted, I've adapted with the times.
That's good. Part of success is adjusting, right? And it can
Exactly.
go hand in hand with what you do. I'm
Right.
sure when there's life, like big life changes, milestones, transitions, there's an
Mm-hmm.
adjustment that needs to happen, and sometimes we need that support to make sure it's smooth. It doesn't really shakes our whole world, and then we get
Exactly.
into certain situations that might be tricky. And I know the finding balance might not be as easy to have it in place
Exactly.
and saying it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the fact that even you and I have connected is because of the virtual world, right? Like you were in a completely different state. Granted, we're technically neighbors, but still, you're not anywhere nearby where I could have just driven over and we could have had this conversation in person. So I do really appreciate all of the opportunities to network with people from all over the world, just because of the technology and the advancements that we have, you know, accomplished as mankind. So there's some things to celebrate on that too.
Exactly. Yes, that's amazing. And also the other thing that I was thinking we can cover today, the one if is obviously areas of focus. So
Hmm.
you will support others in specific situations that might be creating this anxiety, stress, burnout, to give just a couple examples. But
Sure.
also there's other ones that might be a bit more tough to handle. Let's say some PTSD could be an
Mhm.
option to
Yeah.
give an example. But if there's anything specific you wanna um, also provide us some insights into what else might be a flag or a trigger that will be worthwhile raising and creating this awareness too. Sometimes we're not aware about certain things happening, how we're feeling, and then where the support might come in handy.
Yeah. So I guess I've noticed in the therapy world, I also provide coaching services, because sometimes people need a little bit more than like the history work. But then I realize people will want coaching for the future, and I'm like, hey, we can't work on your present day future self until we clear all of the stuff that you're bringing to the table from the past, right? And you reference PTSD. I mean, at this point, trauma has become a catchphrase, but I'm not sure if everybody understands the true depth of what trauma, consistent, persistent experiences that are so traumatizing to your body, what kind of effect it can have on the body on a long-term basis. Like if you look in a lifeline of somebody, the first 10 years of our lives is very clearly influential, and they influence so much of who we become as adults. So, not to say that we're going to go ahead and blame our parents for everything, but there are times when we may have not felt safe. And so a lot of the times, I think my conversations surround nervous system regulation. At the beginning of my career, I was very focused on like intellectualizing and talk therapy, because talk therapy is a lot of let's process out loud. But I would run into people who were very aware of their trauma. They were aware of the things that they have been through, and yet they couldn't implement those things and integrate it into their lived experience. They were aware, so they'll be in the room with me and tell me like, oh yeah, Nishani, I know that I have some wounds from my childhood. My father wounds are really opening up right now. I'm really triggered when I am with my partner because of my dad wounds. Like, my client will tell me that, but then she will go and have the same argument or react the same way and lash out the same way when we're not in the therapy space. And she'll come back to me and be like, I don't understand how I can know something and then not be able to experience it in my life. And that's what led me to this, like, wait a second. So there's attunement and then there's integration. You can't just know who you are and exist in a vacuum. You have to start integrating into your actual life to see if it comes out the same way when you present yourself into your communities, right? That could be family, friends, workplace, wherever. So typically with clients, I love the psychodynamic approach, which is long-term therapy, where it's not a 6-month turnaround. I really benefit working with people for 2 to 3 years, sometimes even 5 years. I have some of my long-term clients, and I really like that long-term process because, as it turns out, humans are not easily convinced to change. Yes, people love to come to therapy and they're like, yes, hey, my building is on fire. I need you to put it out like tomorrow. And then when we actually start working towards it, they're like, well, I don't really want to work on that yet, or I'm not ready for that. Can we go back to this? And can we focus on this? And that takes time. So we have this push and pull in a therapy room where the client says they want to, but when it's time and I'm knocking on the door, they're like, I'm not ready for that. So then it's also a matter of teaching and the psychoeducation about safety, right? Because if you're not feeling safe, you're not going to take any steps forward, right? And fear creates this narrative where we have this rose-colored glasses that fear puts on in front of our eyes, and our conscious self is looking out into the world and going, nothing is safe. I can't breathe. That's not going to work. That person is never going to make it work. Or you start blaming other people. So in my career, I've encountered so many of these clientele. That's why I kind of started pivoting slightly away from therapy, because I realized I want to bring in a little bit more than what my license is expecting me to, because my license is very specifically regulated and there's rules that I have to live by, and I still honor those ethical boundaries. But there are times when I kind of want to step a little bit outside of that because of my life lessons. And I'm a Sri Lankan born native. I'm now a fully naturalized citizen of the United States. But my upbringing from Sri Lanka made it very difficult for me to connect with a therapist here when I first moved, because therapists would be like, set boundaries with your parents. And I'll be like, you want me to go say no to my mom? Like, what? I should just sign my death certificate while I'm at it. Why not? And it just wasn't culturally normal for me to set boundaries. Like, that does not happen in a collectivistic culture that I am from. And we're so individualistic here in America that I love it. I embrace it fully. But I also realized, like, wait a second, what about all the other immigrants that are here, or families of immigrants, or kids who have immigrant parents? There's this disconnection. So I've had a lot of those types of clients. I have a lot of high achievers, a lot of women who are kind of lost. They feel so strong about the things that they're doing, and yet they feel so less worthy about themselves. Like, they don't have that built in. So that's been like my journey of like trying to introduce trauma, trying to introduce nervous system regulation, psychoeducation, obviously introducing science, because I really believe that sometimes you have to approach the topic with knowledge before we get into the emotional space. Some people really need to understand why we talk about the emotional space, because if I start with emotions first, some of my clients are like, what is this nonsense? You're telling me if I just paid attention to my body, everything will go away, Nishani? And I've got a client who said that to me 2 days ago, actually, word to word. And I looked at him and I was like, yep, that is exactly what I'm saying. However, we're not gonna touch that yet, since your brain needs to be convinced that this is actually scientifically found sound and it is provable. There's research, and I have to be ready. I have to be like a PhD candidate that's going, here's a thesis, here's a peer-reviewed article that confirms the evidence. And some of my clients are highly intellectual people that are leaders in various worlds, the medical industry, engineering. And so I have to be able to connect with them and introduce them to a topic that sounds like a taboo thing for them, because they never talk about trauma. Like, I talk about childhood trauma every day with my clients, but some people never talk about that in their lifetime. So it's kind of awkward, it can be a confusing introduction at the beginning, but I think I've done a pretty good job of making my clients feel safe with me so that they can bring up the things that they have been through. And that's something I pride myself in, and just being able to create that container where someone can say the worst possible things that's ever happened to them, or things that they're so ashamed of that they have never said out loud. And I have been a witness to those things. And I'm really, really grateful and humbled that people have chosen to trust me that way. And then I get to go, okay, now I'm challenging you, right? Like, you've given me information. Now I'm seeing the loopholes, and I'm going to poke and poke and prod when it's safe, when we feel regulated, so that everybody moves forward and doesn't feel like they're just running in place.
That's great. I love that you're taking a holistic approach with your clients. So that's perfect. It's a way, as you mentioned, we have different upbringings. The culture comes into play, and we are
Mhm.
complex as human beings, as you mentioned. Like, there's not only like, oh, and like math, that it's 1 + 1 and equals 2. There's just so much complexity, and I can totally um, think, if I was yourself, how
Mm.
tough it can be at times, because you have to take into consideration so many components that come into play into
Mhm.
someone's mind or brain.
Yes.
And there's also, as you mentioned, there could be high performing individuals that sometimes you say like they have it all figured out, they know it all, but there's so much work that can be done in different aspects for us as human beings. So
Yeah.
it's great to know you have these different uh,
Mhm.
skill sets in place to support
Yeah.
any individual at any point in time. And also, one thing that we haven't touched upon, you can also do this from a corporate standpoint, correct?
Yes, yes. I have been invited to host workshops for founders, for leaders, where they're noticing this burnout existing in management, and they're trying to figure out, like, how can we support our leaders so that the leaders can then support everybody else, right? Because if you as a leader are pouring from an empty cup, that's going to start to show, and that really looks like burnout. And again, that's another overused word. I know people throw that word out a lot, but I think it's very telling that in this particular lifetime that we're a part of, burnout seems to be a trend. Like, we have gotten ourselves down to the wire. We're pushing ourselves beyond limits that we could ever, all because we have these opportunities, right? Technology is one of the great examples. Like, we're AI, like, we're pushing ourselves into what more can we do? What more can we accomplish? How can we make this better? So the workshops have really been, I've had to really focus on burnout and addressing, once again, nervous system regulation. I feel like I'm going back to basics with a lot of my work as a speaker and as a coach, where I'm not even talking about the highly intellectual piece. I'm really coming down to, let's slow down our breathing today. Like, that has been my focus lately. And I find that so many people are not realizing the importance of breath work and learning to observe your breath, to slow down your breath, to just connect and observe how your body is existing, and at what what vibration or frequency is your body operating in. Because again, that's oftentimes the energy transcends outside of you. So if that's a leader, your anxious, restless, or easily agitated, gets easily offended because you take everything personally, guess what? Every single person that you interact with is going to have that experience. And then all of a sudden, you have HR issues, and then you have leaders who want time off and short term disability or long term disability time off. And it's for mental health reasons. I've had to write so many letters for people in my career asking their work to give them permission to take a month off because they burned themselves out. And now, even after a month, they don't want to return. A month only gave them the realization that they need more time. But companies are not waiting. The corporate world isn't waiting. So that's probably one of the reasons why I even steered away from corporate and did my own thing, because I did not feel supported as a therapist in the world of corporate mental health. And I struggle with that even today, because I hear a lot of therapists who are so burnt out, but they are somehow supposed to hold space for someone else. I'm like, how can I be a sponge for something else if I'm bleeding? If I'm bleeding on everything around me, how can I create that safety for somebody else? So that's really what led me out of the industry. And I was like, you know what? It's okay if I'm not serving a bigger community, because maybe I can just start small and I can invite other therapists and show them what it means to be safe in a work environment where I'm not controlling. We're all adults. As long as you're doing your work ethically, please decide how you want to do it. Like, let me just support you rather than control you, right? And how can we do that as a collaborative thing rather than I tell you how to think and be and you just go do? It just never worked for me. I was very rebellious. Anytime someone told me to do something, I was like, but why? But tell me more. Like, explain this to me. And I wish people would have just explained it when they asked me to do something. Then they did it. And so I was like, you know what? This is not for me. I'm just going to go do it myself now. I'm not going to say that's been a cup of tea either. It's been its own roller coaster, but it's more rewarding because I have sovereignty. I have my ability to decide, like, this is the kind of leader that I want to be. This is how I want to present it. And now, through just networking and time, companies are like, wait a second, we like what you're saying. Can you come and tell all of our people that? Right? Can you come and teach everybody else that? I'm like, well, it can't be taught in one instance. It did take me my own lifetime to get here. However, let me try, right? Let me curate these workshops and these experiences so that I can introduce and I can just, I like to call it like bring curiosity and ambiguity. Because if I can just poke a little hole in your mind think about it this way, and that's it, the brain will do the job for me. The brain likes to discover things that it doesn't know and it wants to figure things out. So all I have to do is create that question mark. And that's what I like to bring to the table when I talk with corporate, like big leaders, people who have done way more than I ever will. And I'm looking at them like, wow, I am talking to you about breathing. I'm talking to you about something very simple, and yet you're like an astronaut, you're an aviation engineer, and you do so many great things for the world. How can I support you in this moment just for a second, right? Yeah, so I love what I do. I could talk about it for hours.
Part of being successful on your end, it shows like the passion you talk about it and how you show you're brave on speaking out, on not maybe feeling stressed
Hmm.
or probably shy about your story, about how you managed to speak out and
Yeah.
to probably go through certain barriers or those things that as kids or growing up we know this is the way you should behave. You shouldn't
Mm.
talk to your parents that way, or just some
Yes.
examples, but that shows a lot of what you have been building through
Mm.
time and how
Mm.
you are changing now on not only from a person to person perspective but also on a cultural perspective. It
Yes.
shows off how that little spark on curiosity can make big changes. So that's amazing, Nishani.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting to witness myself transition this way, and then also to connect with people from my home country, and then realize that I now sound different and I act different, and there's the barrier even with my own countrymen where I'm like, wow, I I technically speak the language and I know how to connect with that, but I've also adapted and changed the way I perceive things. And like you said, you were talking about like parents say you should respect your elders. You, especially as a woman, there was a lot of expectations built on me as a woman, like just know your place, like stay quiet, like marry and let your husband be the decider. And I have rebelled against it my entire life. And that's probably why I am where I am today, because I knew it didn't fit me. And honestly, Lilia, having learned a little bit about you, I believe that we are aligned and we've met each other also for a reason, because you're also a pioneer. You're shifting out of the norm. You're trying to establish a, a method of being that inspires others. And so I'm really happy to be a part of it, because this is not just educational, like I went and studied and moved to another country kind of thing. This was more than that. I've had to condition my brain, my body into being able to withstand a lot of these challenges that show up, because there's a lot of distractions in the world. A lot of people love to impose upon you their expectations for how you should live, right? That happens a lot. It starts with our parents, but mind you, maybe let's say they cared about us and they wanted to make sure, but not everybody who shares their expectations really cares about us. Sometimes they're operating from that ego mind where they're really thinking about themselves. So it's really important that we figure out, who am I outside of these other voices and noise around me, right? And I believe you're a very physically active person, because I remember seeing your posts with like the strongman stuff, like CrossFit type workouts. And I remember seeing that and I was like, yes, another person who is defying what it means to be a woman. Because in my culture, women are not supposed to lift heavy weights or appear muscular or like look like they can kind of push heavy things. And I'm like, well, who said that? Like, where do we agree that that was the norm? And so I really resonated with that when I first saw some of your posts on LinkedIn. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I get to talk to somebody else who is, because when you do physical activities like that, and I participate in CrossFit, you kind of play with your own mental game. It's like an internal thing where you're looking at other people. I remember in the beginning stages, I look at other people and I would think like, wow, I'm not good enough. Like I got to do more. And then I would burn myself out trying to catch up with somebody who's been doing it for years. And I'm like, wait. I need to reset and think about, what am I capable of? Can I just maintain that consistently enough? And then I realized working out is a mind game. It's a conditioning game. It's another meditative practice. So there's so many different avenues for us to venture out into who you are. And it doesn't need to look the same. Just because you and I have done it this way doesn't mean everybody else has to. But I love that we're having these conversations, because other people can be like, okay, so they tried it this way. Let me tweak it to fit me a little bit. Let me try it this way. And oh, look, that works too. And then you just keep going. And then you meet other people who also match that vibe. And next thing you know, you have a community and you're not alone anymore. And now you have all of us to do it with together, So I think that's incredible.
Amazing. Thanks, Nishani. Thanks for the support. And totally, as you said at the beginning, there's a reason why we connected. We have so many things in common. And the other thing we have in common that we haven't mentioned is, I'm sharing below social handles, links to your podcast. You're sharing content. You are creating a community and supporting the community. So with all this content we're creating, we're really trying to do something else to make a shift within the society, to provide some insights into leadership, into how resilience looks like, discipline, mindset, as you said. Like there's so many components that throughout lifetime, we as women, as leaders, I can say, we have been working and pushing boundaries, because there's lots of pressure in many aspects, and not like the place we come from, where you were born, how you were raised. You were a child at some point, any of us, and it doesn't have to shape what you're going to become and what you're going to do. And what you are now is by no means what you were in the past. So ideally, what we're going to pursue every single day is to become the better version of ourselves, become better than the day before.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. It's an opportunity for everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to address it every day and go like full boot camp mode on to like healing and becoming better. I think rest and being better is just as important. And I've had to learn that the hard way, because sometimes I feel like I'm sprinting and I'm like, wait a second, I'm running a marathon. This is a long game. I need to pace myself and not feel like I have to rush to this end, right? So yeah, as you said, we as women, we've had to bypass a lot of people's expectations and break walls within ourselves, within the society that made us who we are. And right, it never shapes us. It's just an element, right? It's something to look back at and say like, oh, at this time, this is how I was formed and how I was shaped, and society helped me this way. And then as you continue your, self-awareness journey, self-improvement journey, you start meeting other people who will, in my life, I've had a lot of people who have been angels that have shown up and have helped me in the times when I really needed that, when I needed that support. And that's given me the momentum to keep going. And then now I do the same for other people along the way. I'm like, if I can help you just for 5 seconds, right, that's okay. I may not be remembered in your lifetime, but I will know that I took time out of my life to help somebody, even if it didn't benefit me directly. And that's a policy and a value that I hold on to now, that I'm like, I just want to keep giving and giving without the expectation of receiving, because the universe, it always comes back to you. And so I love what you're doing. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me again. And I'm excited to see where all of this goes.
Thanks, Nishani. You stole the last couple of words from my mouth. That it's, as you said, like you are giving without expecting to have everything or anything back. So kudos to you. I know, as you mentioned, like things come back to you. However you behave, perform, and what you do will come back. So kudos to you. I know the best is yet to come. So we'll be in touch. And thanks again. Happy to have you here, Nishani.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Bye.